Hello guys, welcome to Saiyan What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Goku was sent to hell as a child? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Child of Cinders. The pod plummeted through the boundary between realms, its trajectory a burning scar across hell's crimson sky. Demons and damned souls alike paused their eternal torments to witness the strange metallic sphere that defied the natural order. Nothing entered hell willingly, and certainly nothing so technological. The craft punctured the sulphurous clouds above the burning plains, trailing spectral flames that howled with the voices of 1,000 condemned souls. Lord Mephistos, seventh among the demon hierarchs, observed from his obsidian tower as the anomaly crashed into the ashen wasteland 3 territories from his domain. His elongated fingers, each tipped with a talon sharp enough to slice through reality itself, drummed thoughtfully against the windowsill. Interesting, he whispered, voice like sand pouring through an hourglass. What poor soul enters my realm so dramatically? Behind him, his chamberlain, a gaunt thing with skin like parchment, stretched over bird bones, bowed deeply. The soul collectors are dispatched, my lord. Whatever it is shall be brought before you for judgment. Mephistos smiled, revealing teeth filed to perfect points. See that they hurry. Balzath's forces will have noticed too. As if summoned by the utterance of his rival's name, the horizon erupted in emerald flames, the signature of Balzath's vanguard crossing territorial boundaries. War between the lords of hell was eternal, ceaselessly shifting in intensity and focus, but never truly ending. Today, it seemed, they would clash over this unexpected prize. In the impact crater, the pod's door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. Steam escaped into the acrid air, revealing a small, black-haired infant with a brown tail. The child's eyes, unusually alert for one so young, blinked curiously at the crimson sky. Rather than crying at the harsh environment, the Saiyan child observed with an almost preternatural calm, tiny fists clenching and unclenching as if already eager for battle. The first creature to reach the crater was neither Mephisto's collector nor Balzath's soldier, but rather a scavenger, one of hell's native predators. The beast, Resem, a skeletal wolf with skin like cooling magma, crept toward the pod, jagged teeth dripping anticipation at the tender morsel within. The child, Kakarot, though none here would know that name, watched the approach without fear. Something in his Saiyan blood recognized the predator for what it was. When the creature lunged, tiny Kakarot's tail lashed forward with impossible strength, catching the beast across its snout. The creature yelped in surprise, backing away from this strange small thing that should have been easy prey. Before the standoff could conclude, a spear of black metal erupted through the predator's skull. The beast collapsed, dissolving into smoldering embers that scattered across the crater. Beyond stood a figure in piecemeal armor salvaged from a dozen different warriors. Not demon, not quite human, but something in between, one of the damned who had survived centuries in hell through wit and will. Well now, the warrior said, leaning down to examine the pod and its occupant. What manner of creature are you, little one? No soul enters hell so young, and certainly not with its body intact. 6 more figures appeared at the crater's edge, all damned souls who had banded together for survival. All warriors in life who maintained their fighting spirit even in eternal damnation. The leader, who had slain the predator, reached for Kakarot with scarred hands. The infant did not cry out. Instead, he grasped the warrior's finger with surprising strength. Ha! Spirit in this one, the warrior proclaimed. I was called Harza in life. I've led armies, conquered nations, and now I scavenge hell's wastelands. He lifted Kakarot from the pod, examining the child with experienced eyes. You're no human child. What are you? Another of the band, a woman with half her face beautiful and the other half burned away to reveal muscle and bone, the eternal reminder of her mortal sins, stepped closer. Look at his tail. I've seen creatures like this before, passing through the upper realms. Saiyans, they're called. Warrior race from the mortal dimension. Planet killers. Harza raised an eyebrow at his companion. A Saiyan child in hell. The cosmic order truly has gone mad. He turned as emerald flames appeared on the horizon. Balzath's forces approach, and Mephisto's collectors won't be far behind. If the lords claim this child. The decision passed and spoken between the band of warriors. They had survived in hell by avoiding the eternal power struggles between the demon lords, keeping to the margins, fighting only when necessary. But something about this child, this impossible, living child in the realm of the dead, sparked something long forgotten in their damned souls. Perhaps it was purpose, perhaps merely curiosity. Take the child, Harza commanded. We make for the obsidian forest. Its shadows will hide us until we determine what to do with this anomaly. As Balzath's and Mephisto's forces converged on the crater, finding only an empty pod. The band of warriors disappeared into hell's unforgiving landscape, carrying with them a child who should never have been there, a child whose very presence defied the natural order of life, death, and damnation. Kakarot learned to walk amid burning cinders and to run across fields of razor-sharp obsidian. While mortal children took years to develop, the harsh environment of hell and his Saiyan heritage accelerated his growth. By what might have been 3 years in the mortal realm, time moved strangely in hell, stretching and compressing like taffy pulled by sadistic hands. Kakarot was Ulreya. Dai speaking the common tongue of the damned and training in combat. Harza and his band had established a hidden encampment deep within the obsidian forest, where trees of black glass reached toward the perpetually twilit sky. Here, they raised the Saiyan child in the only way they knew how, as a warrior. Again, Harza commanded, circling Kakarot with a blunted blade. Your defense is sloppy. In hell, a single mistake means eternal torment. Kakarot, small but already muscular beyond his apparent years, nodded solemnly. His wild black hair had begun developing blood-red streaks, a physical manifestation of hell's influence on his still-living body. He raised his makeshift staff, centering himself as Harza had taught him. When the attack came, it was from behind, Shira, the half-faced woman, lunging with her bone daggers. Kakarot sensed her approach through some primal instinct, dropping low and sweeping his staff to catch her ankles. She jumped over the sweep, but this put her directly in the path of Kakarot's follow-up strike, a precise thrust to her sternum that sent her stumbling backward. Better, Harza acknowledged with a rare nod of approval. You learn quickly, little devil. Kakarot didn't smile. Expressions of joy were rare in hell, but his tail swished with pride. When do we hunt again? I'm hungry. The band exchanged glances. Kakarot's appetite was legendary among them. Unlike the damned, who required no sustenance, or demons, who fed on suffering and soul energy, Kakarot's living body demanded food. They had discovered early on that hell's native predators could serve as nourishment, though hunting them was perilous. Soon, Harza promised. First, meditation. Your mind must be as sharp as your instincts. Kakarot frowned but obeyed, settling into the stance Ni Ko, another band member who had been a monk in life, had taught him. Meditation was essential in hell, not just for mental discipline but for protection. The realm constantly assaulted living minds with nightmares and temptations, seeking to corrupt or break them. Only through rigorous mental training had Kakarot remained sane where any human child would have been driven mad within days. As he closed his eyes, focusing on his breath as Nico had taught him, Kakarot became aware of something different in the air. A tension, a wrongness. His eyes snapped open. Someone comes, he announced, rising to his feet. Harza didn't question the child's instincts. Battle positions. Could be collectors. Could be worse. The band melted into the obsidian trees with practiced ease. Kakarot followed, his SM. All size making him particularly adept at concealment. They had survived this long by choosing their battles carefully, avoiding the attention of hell's rulers whenever possible. Through the glass-like trunks, they observed a patrol of soul collectors, skeletal figures in tattered robes bearing lanterns of ghostly green fire. The collectors moved with purpose, scanning the forest floor for tracks. Behind them came a figure that made even Harza tense, a sentinel, one of Mephisto's elite hunters. Twice the height of a man, with 4 arms each bearing a different weapon, the sentinel's head was AF. Eaterless mask with a single vertical slit from which occasionally emerged a serpentine tongue. They're tracking us, whispered Varix, the band's scout. They've never sent a sentinel this far into the forest before. They're still hunting the child, Harza concluded. After all this time, Kakarot watched the patrol with unnaturally focused eyes. Though young, He understood what it meant. He was valuable to the demon lords, which made him dangerous to his adoptive family. His hands clenched around his staff, a surge of protectiveness rising in his chest. I could lead them away, he suggested quietly. Harza shook his head. You wouldn't survive alone against a sentinel. We fight together or escape together, Shira added. That's how we've survived this long. The patrol moved closer, the sentinel's mask turning slowly in their direction. Its senses were supernaturally keen. They couldn't hide forever. Southwest, Harza decided, toward the ravine of whispers. The souls there will confuse their tracking. The band prepared to move when disaster struck. Kakarot, shifting his position, disturbed an obsidian branch that snapped with a sound like shattering glass. The sentinel's head whipped toward them, its vertical slit widening to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. Run, Harza commanded, abandoning stealth. The band scattered, but the sentinel moved with impossible speed for its size. One massive arm sweeping through the trees and catching Nico mid-flight. The monk screamed as the sentinel's grip crushed his spiritual form, not killing him. Nothing truly died in hell, but causing pain beyond mortal comprehension. Kakarot didn't run. Something in him, something primal and Saiyan, rejected the thought of abandoning his teacher. With a cry that contained more rage than a child should possess, he launched himself at the sentinel, staff aimed at the creature's mask. The sentinel swatted him aside effortlessly, sending him crashing through 3 obsidian trees before he rolled to a stop. Pain lanced through his small body, real pain, not the spiritual torment of the damned but physical agony that reminded him he was still flesh and blood in a realm of spirits. Harza engaged the sentinel, his ancient blade glowing with runes that allowed it to harm even Hell's elite hunters. The other band members attacked the soul collectors, their experience and teamwork making short work of the lesser entities. Kakarot struggled to his feet, tasting blood in his mouth. The sight of Harza battling the much larger sentinel awakened something in him, pride, determination, and something deeper. His vision blurred, not from injury but from transformation. His heart pounded like a war drum. When the sentinel disarmed Harza with a vicious stroke and prepared to impale the warrior with its trident, something snapped in Kakarot. He looked up at Hell's ever-present crimson moon, a grotesque parody of a celestial body that leaked blood-colored light across the landscape, and felt a response in his tail, in his blood, in his very cells. The transformation was violent and unexpected. Where once stood a small child now loomed a massive ape-like creature, fur black as sin with red patterns like fresh wounds. The great ape roared, a sound that shook the obsidian forest to its foundations and caused even the sentinel to pause in surprise. What followed was carnage. The great ape moved with bestial fury but uncanny precision, smashing the sentinel into the ground repeatedly until the elite hunter's mask cracked and its essence began to leak out like black smoke. The soul collectors fled, but the ape caught 2 in one massive hand, crushing them until they dispersed into spiritual particles. Harza and the band watched in awe and terror as their young charge, transformed into a monster, systematically destroyed their pursuers. When no enemies remained, the great ape turned toward them, red eyes glowing with primal energy. Kakarot, Harza called, using the name they had discovered inscribed inside the pod years ago. Kakarot, control yourself. Remember who you are. For a moment, it seemed the beast would attack them too. Then, slowly, recognition dawned in those massive eyes. The great ape sat heavily, causing the ground to tremble, and looked at its hands as if confused by its own form. The tail, Shira realized. It's connected to the moon. Understanding, Varix moved quickly, using his spectral blade to sever the great ape's tail. The transformation reversed instantly, leaving a naked, exhausted Kakarot lying amid the destruction he had caused. Harza approached cautiously, kneeling beside the child. What was that? He asked, not unkindly. Kakarot's eyes fluttered open, confusion evident. I don't know. I saw the moon and then, anger. A Saiyan ability, Shira explained, helping the child to his feet. I've heard tales of their transformations under full moons. It seems even Hell's mockery of a moon is sufficient to trigger it. Harza ked at the destruction surrounding them, trees shattered, ground cratered, and the sentinel's mask lying broken nearby. This changes everything, he said grimly. The power you just displayed, it will draw attention from every corner of Hell. Kakarot looked down at his hands, still struggling to reconcile them with the massive paws that had crushed a sentinel. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Don't be," Harza replied, surprising the others. "You saved us. But now we must move quickly. That display of power will have been felt by every lord in hell. We need to disappear, deeper than we've ever gone before." "Where?" asked Nico, nursing his crushed arm which slowly reformed its spiritual matter. Harza's expression darkened. "The Forgotten Depths. Even the demon lords fear what dwells there, it may be our only chance to hide Kakarot now." The band gathered what few possessions they had, and as Kakarot dressed in his simple leather armor, he noticed something different in how the others regarded him, a new respect tinged with caution. He had always known he was different from them, but now the gulf between them had widened. He was not just a living child in hell, he was something potentially more powerful than anything they had encountered in centuries of damnation. As they began their journey toward the dreaded Forgotten Depths, Kakarot felt a strange mixture of shame and pride. He had protected his family, but in doing so, he had become a greater danger to them. The contradiction troubled his young mind as they descended deeper into hell's uncharted territories. The Forgotten Depths lived up to their reputation. Unlike the familiar crimson skies and obsidian landscapes of Upper Hell, here the environment shifted unpredictably. Gravity fluctuated, causing them to sometimes walk on walls or ceilings. The air thickened and thinned randomly, making breathing a conscious effort for Kakarot. Worst were the whispers, voices that seemed to emanate from nowhere and everywhere, speaking directly into their minds in languages long dead yet somehow understood. "This place is wrong," Kakarot observed as they established a camp of sorts within a cave whose interior dimensions seemed impossibly larger than its exterior. "All of hell is wrong," Harza replied, sharpening his blade against a stone that occasionally seemed to bleed. "This place is merely more honest about it." 4 years had passed since the incident in the obsidian forest. Kakarot had grown rapidly, his body now resembling that of a young teenager though he was chronologically only 7 or 8 by mortal reckoning. His tail had regrown, but he had learned to control his transformations through rigorous training, able to maintain awareness even in his great ape form. The band had changed too. Their numbers had dwindled. Varix lost to a particularly vicious denizen of the depths, 2 others abandoning the group when the hardships became too great. Only Harza, Shira, and Nico remained with Kakarot. Their bond strengthened through shared survival in this most hostile territory. "They've stopped looking for us," Shira announced, returning from her scouting mission. Half her face, eternally beautiful, smiled while the exposed muscle of the other half twitched in what Kakarot had learned to recognize as her version of pleasure. "No patrols from any of the lords have ventured this deep in months." "Good," Harza nodded. "Perhaps they've found other amusements." Kakarot didn't share their optimism. During their years in the depths, he had learned much about hell's political landscape from his mentors. The demon lords never truly abandoned a pursuit, especially one involving power. If they had stopped searching, it was because they were planning something else. "I want to go hunting," Kakarot announced, standing and stretching. His muscles, dense and defined beyond his apparent years, rippled beneath skin marked with the scars of countless training sessions and battles. The Whisper-s Erpents should be emerging from their burrows at this hour. Harza exchanged glances with Shira. "Take Nico with you, and remember, avoid the western caverns, stay away from the light pools, and if I hear singing, run in the opposite direction," Kakarot finished with a rare smile. "I remember." As he and Nico prepared to leave, Kakarot caught Harza studying him with an unreadable expression. "What?" he asked. Harza seemed to choose his words carefully. "You've adapted well to hell, Kakarot. Better than any living thing should." "It concerns me sometimes." Kakarot shrugged. "It's the only home I've known." "That's precisely what concerns me," Harza replied. "Hell isn't a home. It's a prison, a punishment. You don't belong here." The statement stirred something uncomfortable in Kakarot's chest. He had long known he was different, alive while others were dead or had never been alive in the first place, but he had never truly considered what that meant. Where did he belong, if not here with the only family he had ever known? Before he could formulate a response, a distant scream echoed through the cave system, not the usual ambient suffering of hell, but something immediate and specific. Kakarot's enhanced senses picked up the scent of fresh blood, real blood, not the spiritual ichor of the damned. Someone's being hunted, he said, already moving toward the cave entrance. Someone alive. Nico grabbed his arm. Kakarot, it could be a trap. The lords have tried such tactics before. I know that scent, Kakarot insisted, pulling away. It's like mine, living flesh. Without waiting for permission, he dashed into the twisting tunnels of the forgotten depths. His years here had given him an instinctive understanding of the shifting topography. He moved with confidence where even demons feared to tread, following the scent of blood and the echoing sounds of combat. The tunnel opened into a vast cavern illuminated by pools of glowing magma. In the center, surrounded by writhing shadow beasts, fought a figure that made Kakarot pause in shock. A girl, perhaps his age in appearance, with skin black as night and hair that moved like living flame. She wielded twin daggers that seemed to drink the light around them, fighting with a precision and ferocity that matched Kakarot's own training. But she was losing. For every shadow beast she dispatched, two more emerged from the darkness. A gash across her forearm leaked real blood, the scent that had drawn Kakarot. Not human, but not entirely demon either. Something in between. Without conscious thought, Kakarot launched himself into the fray. He had no weapons besides the bone knife at his belt, but he needed none. Years of training under Harza and surviving the depths had made his entire body a weapon. He tore through shadow beasts with punches that shattered their ethereal forms and kicks that dispersed their essence back to the darkness. The girl, momentarily surprised by his appearance, adapted instantly. They fell into a natural rhythm, fighting back to back against the encircling beasts. When she ducked, he struck high. When he rolled left, she slashed right. It was as if they had trained together for years rather than just met. When the last shadow beast dissolved with a wail of frustration, they stood amid the carnage, breathing hard and evaluating each other with professional appreciation. "You fight well," she said, her voice carrying an accent Kakarot had never heard before. "For someone so young." "I was thinking the same about you," he replied, noticing that her wound was already closing. Pause. "Chair than human healing but slower than a demon's instantaneous regeneration." "What are you?" She wiped her daggers clean on a cloth that seemed to absorb not just blood but darkness itself. "My name is Lilith. I'm a half-blood. Demon father. Human mother. And you're the strangest thing I've seen in all my years in hell. I'm Kakarot. I'm a Saiyan." He'd learned more about his heritage from the band over the years, piecing together fragments of information from those who had observed the mortal realms. Lilith's eyes, entirely black except for irises that burned like embers, widened slightly. "The lost child. The one who fell from the sky. I thought you were just a story the soul collectors told to frighten each other." Kakarot frowned. "You know of me. Everyone in Upper Hell knows of you," she replied. "A living child with the power to transform into a beast that slaughtered a sentinel. There's a bounty on you from 3 different lords." The news shouldn't have surprised him, but it did. Kakarot had assumed they'd been forgotten during their years in the depths. "Why are you here, then? Hunting me?" Lilith laughed, a sound surprisingly musical for one of her appearance. "If I were hunting you, we wouldn't be having this conversation. No, I'm here because I'm running too. Lord Balzeth wants me as his honored guest, which is a polite way of saying hostage against my father's good behavior." "Your father, Duke Azrael, Lord of the 7th Circle's Eastern Quadrant." She said it without pride or shame, merely stating a fact. "My mother was a mortal he became obsessed with. Such unions rarely end well." Kakarot processed this information. A half-demon noble on the run from one of Hell's most powerful lords. His instincts told him to walk away. Getting involved would only bring more attention. But something about Lilith intrigued him. Perhaps it was meeting someone else who didn't quite belong anywhere in Hell's rigid hierarchy. "You're bleeding," he noted, gesturing to her arm where the wound had closed but left a smear of dark red blood. "An inconvenience of being partly mortal," she replied with a shrug. "It will heal completely by tomorrow." The shadow bees' claws carry a venom that slows regeneration. Kakarot nodded, understanding. His own wounds healed faster than a human's would, but not instantaneously like a demon's. Another similarity between them. "My camp isn't far," he found himself saying. "My family can help with that wound. We have remedies for most venoms in the depths. Lilith raised an eyebrow. Family. You mean the band of damned warriors who raised you? That part of the story is true as well. Yes, Kakarot confirmed, slightly uncomfortable with how much she seemed to know about him. They found me when I arrived and have protected me since. She studied him for a long moment. Protected you. From what I just saw, you hardly need protection. Those shadow beasts are apex predators in the depths. You tore through them like paper. Kakarot didn't respond to the compliment, though he felt a strange warmth at her words. The offer stands. Come or don't. Lilith smiled, revealing teeth slightly sharper than a human's bu. Not quite the needle points of a full demon. Lead on, Saiyan child. I find myself curious about the reality behind the legend. Harza was predictably displeased when Kakarot returned with Lilith in tow. But years in hell had taught the old warrior pragmatism above all else. After hearing her story and confirming as much as possible through Shira's limited psychic abilities, they accepted Lilith's presence. If not fully trusting her yet. Balzath's forces rarely venture this deep, Harza acknowledged as they shared a meal of roasted whisper serpent around a fire that burned with blue flames. You should be safe here. At least temporarily. Nowhere in hell is truly safe, Lilith replied, expertly separating meat from the serpent's poisonous glands. But I appreciate the hospitality nonetheless. Kakarot watched her with undisguised curiosity. In all his years in hell, he had never encountered someone so similar to himself, neither fully belonging to the realm nor entirely separate from it. While the band had raised him with as much care as damned souls could manage, there had always been a distance. They were dead, he was alive. They were human, he was Saiyan. But Lilith occupied a middle ground that resonated with his own existence. You said there are stories about me, he said when Harza and the others had moved away to discuss watch rotations. What else do they say? Lilith considered him thoughtfully. They say you're an anomaly, a living child in the realm of the dead. Some believe you're a harbinger of change. Others think you're a weapon sent by the celestial realms to upset hell's balance. And what do you believe? Kakarot asked. Her ember eyes studied him intently. I believe you're dangerous, she said finally. Not because of what you are, but because of what you represent. Hell operates on rigid rules. The dead stay dead, demons rule, and the cosmic order remains unchallenged. You complicate things. Kakarot absorbed her words, finding truth in him that his mentors had perhaps shielded him from. Is that why the lords hunt me? Because I complicate things. Partly, she nodded, but mostly they want your power. A living Saiyan, capable of growth and transformation. You could be shaped into a weapon unlike anything in hell's arsenals. The thought was disturbing. Kakarot had always known he was hunted, but he had assumed it was mere curiosity or fear that motivated the demon lords. The idea that they saw him as a potential weapon added new urgency to his circumstances. I won't be anyone's weapon, he stated flatly. Lilith's mouth curved in a slight smile. That attitude is precisely what makes you valuable. True power in hell isn't found in those who seek to serve. Over the following weeks, Lilith integrated herself into their small band. She brought skills none of them possessed. Intimate knowledge of Upper Hell's politics, contacts among the neutral territories, and fighting techniques specifically developed against demonic opponents. In return, they taught her the secrets of surviving the depths. Kakarot found himself drawn to her, not merely because of their shared status as neither fully belonging to hell nor the mortal realm, but because she approached her existence with a pragmatic acceptance he admired. Where he sometimes raged against his circumstances, she adapted and calculated, turning limitations into advantages. They trained together daily, Lilith teaching him the weak points of various demon species while he helped her develop techniques that utilized her partial mortality as a strength rather than a weakness. Their sparring sessions became increasingly elaborate, drawing on their respective backgrounds to create a hybrid fighting style neither demonic nor mortal. Your problem, Lilith obs. RVED after knocking him down for the third time in succession, is that you fight like you're invincible. Saiyans may be durable, but in hell, everything has a weakness. Kakarot rose, brushing obsidian dust from his leathers. And yours is that you overthink. Sometimes raw power is the answer. She smirked. Prove it. Their next bout ended with both of them breathless and laughing, an unusual sound in the forgotten depths. Kakarot pinned her briefly before she executed a technique that used his own momentum against him, sending them both tumbling across the cave floor to land with Lilith astride him. Ceremonial dagger at his throat. Raw power, you said. She teased. Something changed in that moment, a shift in awareness that made Kakarot suddenly conscious of her weight on his chest, the proximity of her face to his. The scent of her skin which carried notes of brimstone and something sweeter, like rare flowers that bloomed briefly in Hell's harshest regions. Before either could acknowledge the tension, Nico burst into the training cave, expression grave. Scouts at the Eastern Passage, he reported. Not random patrols. They're searching methodically. The moment broken, Lilith rolled gracefully to her feet. Balzath's hunters are another lord's. Neither, Nico replied grimly. They bear the sigil of the adjudicator. Harza, who had been meditating nearby, opened his eyes at this. The adjudicator doesn't involve himself in Hell's politics. If his scouts search these caves, they're not looking for me, Lilith realized, turning to Kakarot. They're looking for him. Kakarot frowned. Who is the adjudicator? Not a demon lord, Harza explained, rising to his feet with the fluid grace of an experienced warrior. Something older. He maintains the boundaries between realms. Ensures souls go where they belong. If he's searching for you, it means your presence here violates cosmic law, Lilith finished. Living beings don't belong in Hell unless judged and condemned, which you weren't. You fell here by accident. The implications settled heavily on Kakarot. What would he do if he found me? The silence that followed was answer enough. The cosmic order brooked no exceptions, even for a child who had known no other existence. We need to move, Harza decided. Deeper into the depths, beyond the adjudicator's usual territory. Shira, who had joined them silently, shook her head. There is no beyond his territory. All realms fall under his jurisdiction. We can only hide and hope he loses interest. No, Kakarot said, surprising them all with the authority in his voice. I'm tired of hiding. If this adjudicator wants me, let him face me directly. That's suicide, Harza countered. You're strong, Kakarot, stronger than any of us expected, but the adjudicator is a cosmic entity. He doesn't fight, he erases. Kakarot looked at each of them, Harza, his mentor and surrogate father, Shira, who had taught him survival and stealth, Nico, from whom he had learned meditation and spiritual resilience, and Lilith, who in weeks had become something none of them could quite define but all recognized as important. They had sacrificed much to protect him. He wouldn't repay that by endangering them further. Then I'll go alone, he declared. Draw him away from you. Absolutely not, Harza began, but Lilith interrupted. He's right, she said quietly. Not about going alone, but about facing this directly. The adjudicator won't stop searching, and every moment we spend in the depths limits us. There's another option. All eyes turned to her. My father, she continued. Duke Azrael has artifacts from before Hell's current configuration. Ancient tools that can hide someone even from the adjudicator's sight. If we could reach his territory. The seventh circle is heavily guarded, Shira objected. And your father may simply hand Kakarot over to save himself trouble. Lilith shook her head. My father prizes two things above all else, knowledge and defiance of authority. A living Saiyan child who concerns the adjudicator. He would protect Kakarot just to study him, and to thumb his nose at cosmic law. Harza considered this. It's still suicide to attempt reaching the seventh circle from here. We would need to cross 3 different lords, territories, all heavily patrolled. Not necessarily, Lilith countered with a gleam in her ember eyes. I know a path. The river of lamentation flows from the depths directly to the outer edge of the seventh circle. It's dangerous, but unpatrolled because most souls cannot withstand the river's influence. And we can? Nico asked skeptically. Lilith looked at Kakarot. He can. His living status provides some immunity to the river's effects. And the rest of us, she gestured to herself and the band. We've all suffered enough that lamentation holds little power over us anymore. The plan was dangerous, possibly suicidal, but it offered direction instead of endless hiding. Arat found himself drawn to the prospect of action, of moving towards something rather than merely away from pursuers. I want to try, he declared. Even if your father can't help, I'd rather face my fate on my terms than spend eternity hiding in the depths. Harza studied him for a long moment before nodding slowly. You've grown, Kakarot, not just in body but in spirit. When we found you, you were a child who needed protection. Now, he gestured to Kakarot's scarred, muscular form, to the confidence in his stance and the determination in his eyes. Now you're a warrior making your own choices. The decision made, they began preparations immediately. The journey to the River of Lamentation would take days, and the adjudicator's scouts were methodically closing in. They packed only essentials, weapons, a few artifacts of power they had collected over the years, and medical supplies for Kakarot and Lilith's partially mortal bodies. As they prepared to leave the cave that had been their home for 4 years, Kakarot found himself standing beside Lilith at the entrance, looking out over the twisted landscape of the Forgotten Depths. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for offering this chance." She glanced at him, ember eyes glowing in the dim light. "Don't thank me yet. The River of Lamentation has driven stronger souls than ours to madness." Still, he insisted, "You could have left when you learned the adjudicator seeks me. Instead, you're risking everything to help." Lilith was silent for a moment before responding. "Perhaps I recognize something in you, Kakarot. Something I've sought in myself. Neither demon nor mortal, neither damned nor saved, we exist in between. That makes us dangerous, and valuable." He considered her words. "Is that why you stayed?" "Because I'm valuable." Her laugh was soft and genuine. "I stayed because for the first time since my birth, I found someone who understands what it means to belong nowhere, and everywhere." She turned to face him fully. "The Lords of Hell want to own you, Kakarot. The adjudicator wants to erase you. But I want to see what you'll become when you're free to choose your own path." Something shifted between them. A connection deeper than training partners or fellow outcasts. Before either could speak further, Harza called them to begin the journey. As they descended toward the distant sound of eternal weeping that marked the River of Lamentation, Kakarot felt a strange sense of destiny unfolding. Hell had raised him, had forged him through fire and suffering into something stronger than he might have been elsewhere. But for the first time, he began to wonder if there might be more to his existence than mere survival in the underworld. With Lilith beside him and his adoptive family at his back, he moved toward a future as uncertain as it was full of possibility. The child who had fallen from the sky had become a warrior of hell, but what he might yet become remained written in neither mortal nor demonic prophecy. The river awaited, and beyond it, perhaps, answers to questions he had only just learned to ask. Chapter 2. Blood and Fire Pact. The River of Lamentation defied conventional understanding. It flowed not with water but with liquefied sorrow, the distilled essence of all grief ever experienced across mortal and immortal realms. Its surface rippled with faces that formed and dissolved in endless succession. Mouths open in silent screams. The sound it produced wasn't quite audible, rather, it resonated directly within the mind of any who approached its banks, conjuring their deepest regrets and most painful memories. Kakarot stood at the edge, 17 by Hell's reckoning, though his body had accelerated to that of a young man in his early 20s, tall, powerfully built, with wild black hair now streaked with crimson patterns that seemed to shift and pulse with his heartbeat. His tail, controlled through years of discipline, wrapped securely around his waist. "It's worse than you described," he observed to Lilith, who stood beside him. In the 3 years since their journey from the Forgotten Depths, she had become his closest ally and confidant. "The river changes," she replied, her ember eyes reflecting the strange luminescence of the sorrow current. "It adapts to those who approach it, drawing on their specific pain. For you," she glanced at him with understanding. "For you, it will show the grief of never knowing your true home or people." Behind them waited the remnants of what had once been Harza's band, now transformed into the core of what many in El's lower circles called the Ashborn, followers of the Saiyan who had been raised in damnation. Harza himself had been lost during their journey along the river years earlier, sacrificing himself to an entity known as the Grief Collector so the others might pass. His final words to Kakarot had been simple: "Make your own fate, not what Hell intends for you." Shira and Nico remained, now joined by 24 others, damned souls, half-demons, and even a few indigenous Hell creatures who had pledged themselves to Kakarot after witnessing his growing power and unique code of honor. Unlike the demo, Lords who ruled through fear and torment, Kakarot offered protection and purpose to those who followed him. In the chaotic landscape of Hell's political structures, this made him both revolutionary and dangerous. We'll need the craft ready as soon as we reach the far shore, Kakarot instructed, turning to a gaunt figure whose body seemed partially composed of living shadow. Moros, your constru, CTS can withstand the aerial patrols of the Fifth Circle. Moros bowed slightly, darkness swirling around him like a cloak. The shadow craft will render us invisible to all but the most sensitive observers, Lord Kakarot. Duke Azrael's sanctuary lies 3 territories beyond the shore. With favorable winds, we should reach it before the changing of the guards at midnight. Kakarot nodded but frowned at the title. Don't call me, Lord. I'm not a demon ruler, nor do I wish to be. Lilith smirked beside him. You command the loyalty of 36 followers, maintain territory in 2 circles of hell, and have survived 3 assassination attempts from established powers. By Hell's standards, you're a lord whether you accept the title or not. He didn't argue further. The politics of Hell Rem aimed a constant irritation, a game he played not by choice but by necessity. Duke Azrael, Lilith's father, had indeed provided sanctuary as she predicted, but not without cost. Their arrangement had evolved into a complex alliance, with Kakarot's growing band of followers serving as an independent force that advanced Azrael's interests while maintaining their autonomy. It was a delicate balance, nay that required Kakarot to develop diplomatic skills alongside his formidable fighting abilities. Where once he had been a curiosity in Hell, a living child anomaly, he had become a power in his own right. A wild card in the eternal struggle between demon lords. It's time, he announced, stepping forward into the shallows of the river. The sorrow current immediately surged around his ankles, tender ILS of grief attempting to penetrate his mental defenses. Images flashed through his mind. A planet he'd never seen exploding in the distance, a people he'd never known screaming in anguish, a heritage forever denied to him. Gritting his teeth, Kakarot pushed forward. Follow exactly in my footsteps, he commanded. The current shifts constantly. What's solid now may be a vortex of despair in moments. One by one, his followers entered the river behind him. Some wept silently as their personal sorrows were amplified by the current. Others walked with expressions of grim determination, having FACED their greatest regrets so many times that even the river could extract no fresh pain from them. Lilith moved beside Kakarot, her natural affinity for Hell's darker aspects allowing her to navigate the current with nearly the same ease as he did. You're thinking about Harza, she observed quietly. Kakarot nodded once, sharp and precise. The river reminds me of his sacrifice, and of how much I still don't know about myself or why I'm here. Perhaps that's what we'll discover in the Vault of Echoes, she suggested. If the rumors are true, and it contains records of all souls that pass through Hell, then I might learn how a living Saiyan child ended up here, he finished. Though I doubt the answer will be to anyone's liking. They continued in silence after that, focusing on the treacherous crossing. Twice they needed to detour around whirlpools of concentrated sorrow that would have dragged even the strongest of them down into depths from which few returned. Once, they confronted a grief leech, a massive, translucent creature that fed on the emotional energy of the river and its victims. Kakarot dispatched it with a precisely aimed energy blast, a technique he had developed that combined his natural ki with the ambient energy of Hell itself. By the time they reached the far shore, all were exhausted but intact. As promised, Moros immediately began constructing their transport, a vessel seemingly crafted from solidified shadow and bone, large enough to carry their entire group but designed to blend into the perpetual gloom of Hell's night sky. While preparations continued, Kakarot climbed a nearby outcropping of black stone to survey the territory ahead. The Fifth Circle stretched before him, a vast expanse of ash plains punctuated by massive columns of green flame that erupted unpredictably from the cracked ground. Beyond that lay the territories of Lords Mephistos and Balzith, both of whom had placed substantial bounties on Kakarot's capture. He sensed wrath, then heard Lilith's approach behind him. After years fighting together, their awareness of each other had developed to an almost preternatural level. Scouts report unusual activity in Mephisto's territory, she said without preamble. His forces are gathered at the northern boundary, far from our planned route. Kakarot frowned. That's not like him. Mephistos is methodical, calculating. He doesn't leave territories undefended without reason. Unless he's responding to a greater threat, Lilith suggested. Or opportunity. Before Kakarot could respond, a new presence made itself known, a figure that seemed to coalesce from the very air, luminescent and ethereal. Neither fully corporeal nor entirely spectral, the newcomer possessed a beauty that was painful to behold, perfect features and by hair that shifted colors like an aurora, eyes that contained galaxies. Kakarot and Lilith moved instantly into defensive positions, but the figure raised empty hands in a universal gesture of peace. I come unarmed, the being said. Voice like crystal chimes but underscored with steel. And at great risk to myself. Identify yourself, Kakarot demanded, energy gathering at his fingertips. The figure inclined its head slightly. I am called Vesa in this realm. In others, I have different names. You would classify me as a fallen celestial. Lilith hissed softly. Celestials don't fall into hell without judgment. They're erased from existence. Usually. Yes, Vesa agreed, her form flickering slightly as if maintaining cohesion required effort. My case was complicated. I questioned too much, saw too clearly the flaws in the system I served. Rather than erasure, I was sentenced to observation duty in the upper circles. A punishment disguised as mercy. Kakarot studied the celestial being with open suspicion. Entities from the upper realms rarely interacted with Hell's denizens, and never without purpose. Why reveal yourself to us now? Because Mephistos gathers his CES to intercept something that fell through the boundaries between realms yesterday, something that concerns you directly, Kakarot of the Saiyans. Vesa's galaxial eyes focused on him with unsettling intensity. A fragment of memory, a psychic echo powerful enough to maintain coherence even in hell. It belongs to the being who destroyed your home world. The statement landed like a physical blow. Though Kakarot had pieced together fragments about his Saiyan heritage over the years, concrete information remained scarce. He knew his people had been warriors, that their planet had been destroyed, but little more. Who? He demanded, voice rough with sudden emotion. Who destroyed my world? A tyrant called Frieza, Vesa replied. Lord of much of the living universe, destroyer of planets, enslaver of species. The echo contains his memories of the Saiyan genocide. Knowledge that would be valuable to you, but dangerous in the hands of Hell's lords. Lilith stepped forward, her ember eyes narrow with suspicion. Why would a celestial care what knowledge reaches a Saiyan raised in Hell? Your kind typically maintains neutrality in our affairs. Vesa's form flickered again, more pronouncedly this time. Because the balance has already been disrupted. Kakarot's presence here violates cosmic law, yet the adjudicator has been prevented from correcting this anomaly. Now Frieza's psychic echo creates further complications. The system my kind serves is rigid, unbending, it's breaking under the weight of these exceptions. And you prefer a controlled break to a shatter, Kakarot surmised, beginning to understand. The fallen celestial's lips curved in the ghost of a smile. Precisely. I believe you should have this knowledge, Kakarot. What you do with it afterward may determine far more than just your fate. Decision crystallized in Kakarot's mind with characteristic swiftness. Where exactly is this echo? The plains of Ash, near the border between Mephistos and Balzath's territories. Both lords race to claim it, unaware of its true significance. Their forces will converge within hours. Kakarot turned to Lilith. Change of plans. Tell Moros to ready the shadow craft immediately. We're making a detour before reaching Azrael's sanctuary. She nodded without question, descending the outcropping to relay his orders. When she had gone, Kakarot returned his attention to the celestial. Why really help me, Vesa? Fallen or not, your kind doesn't intervene without personal motive. Vesa's form stabilized slightly, as if his direct questioning somehow anchored her to the conversation. Perhaps I see in you a chance for change, something my kind has forgotten how to create. Or perhaps, her galaxial eyes seemed to look through him to something beyond. Perhaps why wish to atone for my complicity in a system that allows tyrants like Frieza to flourish while entire species are condemned to extinction? Before Kakarot could press further, Vesa's form began to dissolve into particles of light. They come, she warned. Mephisto's scouts. I cannot be detected here. Wait. Kakarot started, but the celestial was already gone, leaving only a faint luminescence in the air that quickly faded. Lilith returned moments later, finding Kakarot staring at the empty space. "The shadow craft is ready," she reported. "But I must ask, do you trust this Celestial's information?" Kakarot considered the question carefully. Trust came rarely to those raised in hell, where betrayal was as common as breathing. "Not entirely," he admitted. "But the opportunity to learn about my people's destruction. I have to take that chance." She studied his face with an intensity that would have made most uncomfortable, but which Kakarot had grown accustomed to over their years together. "This is personal for you," she observed. "More than strategic." "Yes," he acknowledged simply. To his mild surprise, she nodded in acceptance. "Then we'll go, but cautiously. I've dispatched Nyx and Krell as advance scouts. If this is a trap, we'll know before we're committed." Together they descended to where the shadow craft waited, a vessel seemingly stitched together from darkness itself. Hovering slightly above the ashen ground, the Ashborn were already aboard, preparing weapons and reviewing the hasty battle plans Shira had devised. As Kakarot stepped onto the craft, the material beneath his feet seemed to recognize him, rippling slightly before firming into a solid surface. Moros had explained once that the shadow matter responded to intent and will, something Kakarot possessed in abundance. "Set course for the border between Mephistos and Balzath," he commanded. "Maximum stealth. We observe first, act only when we're certain of what we face." The shadow craft rose silently into Hell's crimson-tinged sky, accelerating with impossible speed toward the horizon. Below them, the landscape changed from the relative stability of the Fifth Circle to the more chaotic topography of territories in dispute. Here, reality itself seemed in flux, responding to the competing wills of demon lords who claimed dominion. Standing at the craft's prow, Kakarot felt an unfamiliar sensation, not quite hope. For Hell bred that emotion out of its denizens quickly, but perhaps anticipation. After years of building power and influence without clear purpose beyond survival, he might finally learn why fate had placed him in this realm of torment and chaos. The knowledge might not change his circumstances, but it would at least provide context for his existence. Lilith joined him at the prow, her flame-like hair whipping in the wind of their passage. "You should prepare yourself," she said quietly. "The truth of your people's destruction may be more painful than the mystery." Kakarot nodded once, acknowledging her concern without allowing it to deter him. "Pain is familiar territory," he replied. "Uncertainty is the greater torment." Her ember eyes studied him for a long moment before she spoke again. "Just remember, whatever you learn about your past doesn't determine your future. That choice remains yours." It was a sentiment that would have seemed trite anywhere but Hell, where predetermined fates and eternal punishments were the established order. Here, the assertion of choice was revolutionary, a defiance of Hell's fundamental purpose. That Lilith understood this about him, understood his deep-seated rejection of predetermined roles, only confirmed why she had become essential to his inner circle. The journey to the disputed territories took less time than expected. Moros, shadow craft slicing through dimensional shortcuts that conventional travel would have avoided. As they approached their destination, Kakarot sensed a change in the atmosphere, an electric tension that made his Saiyan battle instincts flare to life. "There," Nyx announced from her scouting position, pointing toward a disturbance visible on the horizon. Green and purple energies clashed in spectacular fashion, illuminating the ash plains below. "Mephisto's forces engaged with Balzath's," Shira confirmed, her ruined face contorted in concentration as she extended her psychic senses. "They fight over something small. Contained. I cannot clearly perceive it, but it radiates power." Kakarot nodded. "The psychic echo. Take us in, but maintain distance. We wait for an opening." The shadow craft descended to an outcropping of black stone that provided both concealment and a clear view of the battlefield below. What they observed confirmed Vessa's information. Armies represent. Two of Hell's most powerful lords clashed over a small object that pulsed with unnatural light at the center of the conflict. From their vantage point, Kakarot assessed the situation with the tact acumen he had developed through years of survival in Hell's most dangerous territories. Both forces were evenly matched, their front lines engaged in direct combat while specialized units attempted to outflank each other. Neither side could gain decisive advantage, resulting in a bloody stalemate that showed no signs of resolution. "Perfect," he murmured. They'll exhaust each other, creating our opportunity. Lilith, ever pragmatic, raised the obvious concern. Even exhausted, either force outnumbers us significantly. A direct engagement would be suicide. Who said anything about direct engagement? Kakarot replied with a rare smile that displayed the predatory edge he typically kept concealed. Moros, can your shadows reach the echo without detection? The Shadow Weaver considered for a moment. Not without crossing open ground. The power emanating from the echo disrupts my control at a distance. Then we need a distraction, Kakarot decided. Something significant enough to draw attention from both armies without revealing our presence or intent. It was Nico, typically the most contemplative of the group, who offered the solution. The ash plains are unstable here, where the territories overlap. A focused disruption at the right junction could trigger a localized collapse. Shira nodded in understanding. Creating chaos without our signature energy being detected. It could work. With swift efficiency born of years operating as a unit, the Ashborn formulated their plan. Nico and 2 others would position themselves at strategic points around the battlefield, using specialized artifacts to stimulate the unstable ground. The resulting disturbance would create chaos among the fighting forces, allowing Kakarot and Lilith to approach the echo under cover of Moro's shadow concealment. As preparations concluded, Kakarot addressed his followers. Remember, we're here for the echo only. Avoid engagement with either force unless absolutely necessary. If separated, make your way to the secondary rendezvous point in the Crystal Caverns. The operation began with precision timing. At Kakarot's signal, Nico activated his artifact, an ancient bone flute said to have been carved from the remains of a forgotten god. The discordant notes it produced were inaudible to most, but the ground beneath the battlefield responded immediately, trembling like a living thing in pain. Within moments, fissures opened across the ash plains, venting superheated gas and causing sections to collapse into previously hidden caverns. The organized battle devolved into chaos as both armies scrambled to maintain cohesion while avoiding the widening chasms. Now, Kakarot commanded, and Moros extended his shadow matter to envelop him and Lilith in a protective shroud of darkness. Thus concealed, they descended toward the battlefield, moving with extraordinary speed through the confusion of collapsing earth and panicking demons. They reached the center of the conflict just as a particularly violent tremor caused the ground immediately surrounding the echo to drop several feet, creating a natural barrier that momentarily separated it from the fighting forces. The echo itself appeared as a crystalline shard no larger than Kakarot's palm, pulsing with an inner light that shifted between pale blue and malevolent purple. As Kakarot reached for it, a voice like broken glass raped across his consciousness. So the monkeys had one survivor after all. How annoying. The psychic impression was so powerful, so alien and yet horrifyingly familiar, that Kakarot hesitated. In that moment of uncertainty, a new combatant entered the fray, a serpentine figure moving with blinding speed through the chaos, heading directly for the echo. Another player, Lilith warned, daggers appearing in her hands. The newcomer reached the echo seconds before they did, snatching it from its resting place with a scaled hand. Only then did she become fully visible to them, a female figure with reptilian features. Her body covered in iridescent scales that shifted color with her movements. Her eyes, vertical pupilled and golden, locked onto Kakarot with immediate recognition. Saiyan, she hissed, voice melodic despite its reptilian quality. I sensed your approach. This belongs with me, not with the demon lords, and certainly not with Frieza's killer. Before either could respond, the Serpentine woman produced a small device from a pouch at her waist. When activated, it created a localized distortion, not quite a portal, but a disruption in space that allowed her to slip away with extraordinary speed. After her, Kakarot commanded, breaking into pursuit with Lilith close behind. They followed the serpent woman through the battlefield, their superior speed allowing them to gain ground despite her head start. The chase led them away from the main conflict, past the collapsing sections of the ash plains, and into a region of crystallized vegetation, the petrified remains of what might once have been a forest in some long-forgotten age. Here the serpent woman turned to face them, Echo clutched protectively against her chest. Come no closer, she warned. I have no quarrel with you, Saiyan. But this memory fragment is mine by right. Kakarot slowed his approach, recognizing the defensive stance of a cornered fighter with nothing left to lose. "I don't know you or what claim you have to the Echo," he said, keeping his voice level, "but it contains memories of my people's destruction. I need to know what happened." Something flickered in the serpent woman's golden eyes, recognition, perhaps even sympathy. "Your people," she repeated. "The Saiyans. Yes, I suppose you would want to know." She studied him more carefully. "You're young. Too young to remember it yourself." "I was an infant when I somehow arrived in hell," Kakarot confirmed. "I know almost nothing of my origins or how my people died." The serpent woman seemed to come to a decision. "My name is Naga, last queen of the Serpent Imperium that once ruled 17 systems in the living realm. Frieza destroyed my world too, after using my people as shock troops in his conquests." She held up the crystalline shard. "This echo contains his memories of multiple genocides, including both our peoples. I sought it because it may hold the key to resurrection." Lilith made a small sound of disbelief. "Resurrection is impossible. Once in hell, the dead remain dead." "For most, yes," Naga agreed. "But my people developed technologies that blurred the boundaries between life and death, body and soul. With the proper knowledge, the right components." She trailed off, then refocused on Kakarot. "You're different. Alive when you should be dead. That makes you valuable, and dangerous." Kakarot considered the Serpent Queen carefully. Her claim to the Echo had merit, equal to his own. Both sought knowledge of their destroyed peoples, both had suffered at the hands of the same tyrant. Fighting over the Echo would benefit neither of them. "I propose an alternative," he said finally. "Share the Echo's knowledge with me, and in return, I offer you sanctuary with my followers. We have resources, territory, protection from the demon lords who would use you for their own purposes." Naga's scaled features revealed little, but her tail, long and powerful, twitched in what might have been surprise. "You would ally with me rather than simply take the Echo by force. You could, you know. There are two of you, and despite my abilities, I sense your power exceeds mine." "Force is a tool of last resort," Kakarot replied. "Knowledge freely shared is more valuable than that which is stolen." The Serpent Queen studied him for a long moment before a smile slowly revealed fangs like polished pearls. "How unhell-like of you, Saiyan. Perhaps that's why you've survived this long." She extended the crystalline shard toward him. "Very well, we shall share the knowledge, and I shall consider your offer of alliance." Before Kakarot could accept the Echo, a new voice interrupted, harsh, metallic, and undeniably artificial. "Fascinating interaction. Subject displays negotiation patterns inconsistent with standard hell-raised entities." All three turned toward the source, a figure that seemed more machine than being, though in hell such distinctions often blurred. Female in general shape, her body appeared constructed from a combination of technological components and organic materials fused together through unknown means. Glowing circuit-like patterns covered her visible skin, pulsing with each word she spoke. "Who are you?" Lilith demanded, daggers still ready. The newcomer approached with mechanical precision, head tilted at an angle that suggested analysis rather than aggression. Designation: Moira. Function: knowledge acquisition and technological innovation. Current status: independent researcher. Her gaze fixed on the Echo in Naga's hand. "That contains data critical to understanding cross-dimensional information transfer. I would examine it." Kakarot exchanged glances with Lilith and Naga, all three united in confusion and wariness toward this strange new entity. "You're not affiliated with the Demon Lords?" he asked. Moira's face shifted into what might have been intended as a smile but resembled a system reboot. "Affiliation terminated. The Lords lack vision regarding technological potential. Their focus on suffering is inefficient. I seek knowledge for its own application." "She's a soul engineer," Naga explained, recognition dawning. "Rare in hell. They manipulate soul energy through technological means rather than ritual or innate ability." "Correct assessment," Moira confirmed. "Your species demonstrates superior comprehension compared to standard hell denizens." Before the increasingly bizarre conversation could continue, a distant explosion reminded them of their precarious position. The battle between Mephisto's and Balzath's forces continued, and their sense from the shadow craft would soon be noticed by their followers. "We need to leave," Lilith urged. "Now." Kakarot nodded. "Both of you," He addressed Naga and Moira, "If you wish to examine the echo in relative safety, come with us. We have transportation nearby and a secure location where we can all learn what this fragment contains." The decision required minimal deliberation. Neither Naga nor Moira had sustainable positions in Hell's hierarchy without protection, and Kakarot's growing reputation as both formidable warrior and honorable leader made his offer attractive despite the inherent risks of trusting anyone in the underworld. Their return to the Shadow Craft proceeded without incident, though Kakarot noted the surprise among his followers at the addition of 2 new companions. He offered minimal explanation. Time for detailed introductions would come later, once they had reached the relative safety of Duke Azrael's territory. As the Shadow Craft rose once more into Hell's crimson sky, Kakarot examined the crystalline shard now in his possession. Within its seemingly fragile structure swirled memories not his own, the experiences of the being who had apparently destroyed his entire species. The prospect of accessing such knowledge was both tantalizing and terrifying. "It's designed to be accessed by compatible consciousness," Naga explained, noticing his examination. "Frieza's psychic pattern would activate it fully. The rest of us can only glimpse fragments through indirect contact." "Incorrect," Moira interjected, circuit patterns pulsing with increased intensity. Properly calibrated interface could extract complete data sequence regardless of consciousness compatibility. "You can build such an interface?" Kakarot asked. The Soul Engineer's approximation of a smile returned. "Affirmative. With appropriate materials and energy sources. Duke Azrael's territory contains necessary components based on previous observation." Lilith approached, having completed her check of their course and security. "My father won't provide such materials freely," she warned. "Everything in Hell comes with a price." "I'm counting on it," Kakarot replied. "The more valuable he finds our alliance, the more protection he'll extend. These new developments," he gestured to Naga, Moira, and the Echo, "increase our worth considerably." The journey to Duke Azrael's territory took them through the upper edge of the 7th Circle, a region characterized by rivers of boiling blood that cooled and solidified into crimson crystal formations as they approached the Duke's domain. Unlike the chaotic, ever-shifting landscapes of the disputed territories, Azrael's realm displayed ordered, almost architectural precision, a testament to the Duke's methodical nature and long-term control. They were met at the boundary by an honor guard of Azrael's personal soldiers, entities that resembled classical demons but moved with the discipline of trained military units rather than the chaotic aggression typical of Hell's forces. Kakarot recognized their captain, a veteran named Varzik who had developed a grudging respect for the Saiyan over the years of their alliance. "Lord Kakarot," Varzik greeted with minimal ceremony. "Duke Azrael awaits your report in the Obsidian Spire. He is displeased with your deviation from the planned route." "I bring compensation for the delay," Kakarot replied, holding up the crystalline shard which pulsed more intensely in proximity to Azrael's domain. "Information the Duke will find extremely valuable." Varzik's expression remained impassive, but the slight tilt of his horned head indicated interest. "The Duke appreciates value. Follow me." The procession moved through Azrael's territory with formal precision, the honor guard surrounding Kakarot and his companions in a formation that was equal parts protection and subtle containment. The Ashborn followed at a respectful distance, led by Shira and Nico who had experienced navigating the complex etiquette of the Duke's realm. At the center of the territory rose the Obsidian Spire, a structure that defied conventional architecture, appearing to be both grown and constructed from a single massive crystal of perfect black. Its facets reflected no light but seemed instead to absorb it, creating an impression of infinite depth within each polished surface. Duke Azrael awaited them in his audience chamber, a vast space whose ceiling disappeared into darkness and whose floor featured an intricate mosaic depicting the history of Hell from its earliest epochs to the current era. The Duke himself sat upon a throne that seemed to grow directly from the floor, not quite chair, not quite living entity, but something between the two. Unlike many demon lords who favored intimidating, monstrous forms, Azrael presented himself with elegant restraint. Tall and aristocratic, his features were classically handsome except for the vertical pupils of his eyes, the same eyes his daughter Lilith had inherited, and the subtle patterns of scale-like texture visible on his temples and jawline. "Kakarot," the Duke greeted, voice like aged brandy poured over ice. "Your detour caused me considerable inconvenience." The adjudicator's agents grow bolder in their incursions, and your absence left certain defenses undermanned. Kakarot approached the throne and bowed with precisely the pth that indicated respect without subservience, a distinction he had learned was crucial in Hell's political landscape. My apologies for any inconvenience, Duke Azrael. We encountered an opportunity too valuable to ignore. Azrael's attention shifted to the newcomers behind Kakarot, his expression revealing nothing but his eyes narrowing slightly at the sight of Naga. The last Serpent Queen, he observed. Your reputation precedes you, Your Majesty. Your innovations in soul-binding technology were impressive, even by Hell's standards. Naga inclined her head with regal precision. Duke Azrael, your collection of forbidden knowledge is similarly renowned. The Duke's gaze moved to Moira, and something like genuine surprise flickered across his features. A soul engineer. I believed you. Our kind extinct after the purge of the third epoch. Incorrect. Dormant. Not extinct, Moira replied. Reactivation occurred when dimensional barriers weakened 17 cycles ago. Finally, Azrael's attention settled on the crystalline shard in Kakarot's hand, his expression sharpening with immediate recognition. A psychic echo. Powerful, by its resonance. The signature is interesting. He leaned forward slightly. Show me. Kakarot approached the throne and held out the shard. Rather than taking it, Azrael merely passed his hand above the crystal, causing the swirling energies within to respond to his presence, coalescing briefly into the ghostly image of a being with horns, purple skin, and an expression of cruel amusement. Frieza, Azrael breathed, genuine surprise evident. The destroyer of worlds. His essence has never before penetrated Hell's boundaries. This is unprecedented. The echo contains his memories of destroying both the Saiyan and Serpent civilizations, Kakarot explained. We believe, with Moira's help, we can extract that knowledge completely. The Duke leaned back, fingertips pressed together in contemplation. Knowledge is valuable, he agreed. But application creates true power. What do you intend to do with these memories once obtained? It was the question Kakarot had anticipated, the negotiation point around which their entire arrangement would revolve. The memories may contain information about dimensional boundaries, he replied carefully. About how living beings and their essence can cross between realms. Such knowledge would be useful to many parties, including the adjudicator, Azrael noted with a thin smile, whose primary function is preventing exactly such crossings. Precisely, Kakarot confirmed. Which makes the info our machine valuable as both tool and leverage. Duke Azrael studied him for a long moment, vertical pupils contracting to thin lines in the chamber's dim light. You've learned much about Hell's politics since our first meeting, young Saiyan. Very well, you shall have access to my workshops and material stores for this project. In exchange, I receive full copies of all information extracted from the Echo. Agreed, Kakarot nodded. With one condition. My followers and these two guests receive your full protection during our stay, regardless of the project's outcome. The Duke's smile widened slightly. Always concerned for your people. An admirable quality, if somewhat unhell-like. He waved a hand in elegant dismissal. Granted. Now go. I expect regular reports on your progress. As they were escorted from the audience chamber, Lilith fell into step beside Kakarot. He agreed too easily. She murmured. My father never gives without taking more in return. I know, Kakarot replied quietly. But for now, we need his resources and protection. We'll deal with the inevitable complications when they arise. The following weeks established a new rhythm for Kakarot and his expanded circle. Duke Azrael provided a section of his domain for their use, a complex of chambers and workshops nestled within a smaller spire adjacent to his own. Here, Moira established her laboratory, converting the space with remarkable efficiency into a workshop filled with devices whose functions defied conventional understanding. Naga integrated herself among the Ashborn with surprising ease, her nature, authority and tactical mind earning respect from even the most skeptical followers. She established a training regimen that incorporated Serpent Imperium fighting techniques, sharing knowledge previously unknown in Hell and enhancing the group's already formidable capabilities. Most significantly, Vesa returned, appearing without warning in Kakarot's private quarters 3 days after their arrival in Azrael's domain. The fallen Celestial's form had stabilized somewhat, though she still occasionally flickered between corporeal and ethereal states when her concentration wavered. The echo's presence distorts local reality, she explained when questioned about her appearance. It creates thin points in the barriers between realms, allowing me greater freedom of movement. Convenient timing, Lilith commented with undisguised suspicion. Vesa acknowledged the implied accusation with a slight incline of her head. I follow patterns and probabilities, daughter of Azrael. This convergence of circumstances, Saiyan, serpent, soul engineer, and Frieza's echo, creates ripples across multiple dimensions. Such disruptions are interesting to one of my kind. Interesting enough to risk being discovered by your former colleagues. Kakarot pressed. The fallen celestial's eyes, containing galaxies in constant motion, focused on him with uncomfortable intensity. Some risks are worth taking. The potential exists for fundamental change. Despite Lilith's continued suspicion, Kakarot allowed Vesa to join their efforts. Her knowledge of dimensional boundaries proved invaluable as Moira constructed her interface device, a complex apparatus of crystal, metal, and materials with no name in any mortal language. The soul engineer worked with machine-like precision, rarely sleeping or pausing except when forced to wait for specific components from Azrael's stores. On the 7th day of construction, Kakarot found Moira alone in the workshop, circuit patterns pulsing with unusual intensity as she manipulated a particularly delicate component. You've made remarkable progress, he observed. Moira's movements paused briefly, her head tilting in that analytical angle that had become familiar. Efficiency increases when purpose aligns with function. This project satisfies both parameters. Kakarot leaned against a workbench, studying the soul engineer with genuine curiosity. You've never explained how you came to be in Hell, or why you were in the disputed territories during the battle. For a moment, he thought she would ignore the implicit question. Then her circuits dimmed slightly, a gesture he had come to recognize as her version of contemplation. Origin story. Human scientist specializing in consciousness transfer technology. Ethical boundaries. Ignored in pursuit of innovation. Result. Self-experimentation leading to catastrophic failure. Her voice remained mechanical but carried a new undertone, something almost like regret. Post-death evaluation resulted in Hell assignment. Classification. Pride and hubris category. And now, Kakarot prompted. Continued research. Different parameters. Without biological limitations, technological integration achievable at unprecedented levels. She gestured to her hybrid body. Current form represents 17 major evolutionary iterations. Before Kakarot could respond, the workshop door opened to admit Naga, her scaled form moving with characteristic fluid grace. The interface device appears near completion, she observed. Have you considered the risks of activating it? Moira's circuits brightened again. Risk assessment. Completed. Probability of catastrophic failure. 17.3%. Acceptable parameters given potential knowledge gain. For you, perhaps, Naga replied with a slight hiss. But the rest of us lack your modular nature. If the echo's power overwhelms the interface, the psychic backlash could damage even non-corporeal entities. Kakarot straightened, sensing the tension between the two. What precautions can we take? Isolation chamber, Moira suggested immediately. And sequential access protocol. Subject 0 interfaces directly, relays filtered information to secondary observers. Subject 0 meaning? Kakarot asked, though he already suspected the answer. Moira's approximation of a smile appeared. Saiyan physiology demonstrates remarkable resilience to psychic intrusion. Additionally, genetic connection to memories increases compatibility, reducing rejection probability. Before Kakarot could respond, another presence made itself known, not through the door but by simply materializing in the center of the workshop. Keetra, the forgotten death goddess, appeared without warning or ceremony, her form shifting between corporeal and spectral states with each breath. The Saiyan cannot interface directly, she announced, voice echoing strangely as if coming simultaneously from everywhere and nowhere. His mind remains alive, while the echo contains death memories. The dissonance would destroy him. Moira's circuits flashed in what might have been irritation. Identity and authorization request. I am Keetra, the goddess replied, her form solidifying moment. Airily to reveal ancient beauty, features that combined aspects of a dozen different species, as if her worshippers had spanned multiple worlds. Once goddess to 17 civilizations, now remembered by none. I observe the boundaries between life and death, and I tell you with absolute certainty, this approach will fail. Kakarot studied the newcomer with cautious interest. Entities claiming divine status were not uncommon in Hell. But few manifested such obvious power or spoke with such authority. "You've been watching us," he stated rather than asked. Keetra's attention shifted to him, her EY's constantly changing color and pattern, focusing with unsettling intensity. "I have watched you since you first fell into this realm, child of Vegeta. Your path interests me, particularly now, when it converges with possibilities long forgotten. If direct interface is impossible," Naga interjected practically, "what alternative do you propose?" The forgotten goddess extended a hand, revealing a small object that resembled a seed made of crystal. A buffer, created in the age before Hell's current configuration, when the boundaries between realms were more permeable. It will allow the chose memories to manifest as experiences rather than direct knowledge, safer for a living mind to process. Moira approached, circuits pulsing rapidly as she analyzed the offered item. Unfamiliar technology. Principles appear sound. Integration possible with minor modifications to current interface design. Kakarot looked between Keetra and the seed-like object, suspicion warring with necessity. "What's your interest in this? Why help us access the echo?" Keetra's form flickered again, momentarily revealing a more primal aspect beneath her beautiful exterior, something ancient and terrifying, too many eyes and impossible geometries. Then she was again merely a forgotten goddess, beautiful and sad. "Gods require belief to maintain power," she explained simply. "My worshippers are gone, my temple's dust, my very name fading from all records. But legends endure. If you succeed in what you ultimately seek, escape from Hell itself, the story will resonate across dimensions. And in that telling, perhaps my name will be remembered once more." It was nakedly self-interested, which paradoxically made it more believable than altruism would have been. In Hell, honest selfishness was preferable to false charity, which invariably concealed darker motives. "Very well," Kakarot decided. "We'll incorporate your buffer into the interface. But you'll remain present during the activation, in case complications arise." The goddess inclined her head in agreement. "As you wish, Saiyan. Though I suspect when the memories begin to flow, none of us will wish to be elsewhere." 3 days later, preparations were complete. Moira's interface device dominated the central chamber they had converted for the purpose, a complex arrangement of crystal, metal, and organic components surrounding a reclined chair positioned directly beneath the apex of a pyramidal structure. The crystalline echo hovered in a containment field at the pyramid's peak, pulsing with increasing frequency as if sensing its imminent activation. Keetra's buffer seed had been integrated into the interface at the junction between the echo and the recipient, a modification that had required Moira to reconceptualize significant portions of her original design. The sole engineer had worked without rest to complete the adjustments, her circuit patterns burning increasingly bright as she pushed her hybrid form to its limits. As Kakarot prepared to take his position in the chair, Lilith approached him with uncharacteristic hesitation. Over the weeks of preparation, she had maintained a careful distance from the project, focusing instead on managing relations with Duke Azrael and ensuring the Ashborn remained vigilant for any sign of betrayal. "You don't have to do this," she said quietly. "There are other ways to learn about your past." Kakarot adjusted the lightweight armor he had chosen for the procedure, practical leathers reinforced with hell-forged metal at vital points. "None as direct or comprehensive," he replied. "Besides, everyone else has contributed to this effort. I won't ask others to take risks I'm unwilling to face myself." Her ember eyes studied him with an intensity that revealed more than her carefully neutral expression. "Just be careful. Hell has shaped you, Kakarot, but it doesn't define you. Remember that when you see what Frieza did to your people." The concern in her voice, rare from someone raised in Hell's emotional austerity, caused Kakarot to pause. He reached out, briefly clasping her shoulder in a gesture of reassurance. "I know who I am, Lilith. These memories may show me where I came from, but they won't change who I've become." She nodded once, sharp and precise, then stepped back to join the others who had gathered to observe the procedure. Naga stood with regal composure, her scaled hands clasped before her in formal attention. Moira monitored the interface with mechanical precision, circuit patterns shifting as she made final adjustments. Vesa hovered at the perimeter, her celestial form flickering less frequently now, stabilized by proximity to the echo's dimensional distortions. Ketra manifested most strongly near her buffer seed, her forgotten deity status granting her particular affinity with the ancient technology. Duke Azrael had sent a representative rather than attending personally, a prudent decision given the experimental nature of the procedure. The Duke's proxy, a scholarly demon named Thaxus, observed with clinical detachment from a specially shielded alcove. Final diagnostic complete, Moira announced. Interface stability at 94.6%. Buffer integration nominal. Subject may proceed with immersion sequence. Kakarot settled into the chair, allowing Moira to attach neural connectors to his temples and wrists. These were not needles or invasive implements but rather crystalline discs that adhered to his skin through means that seemed partly technological, partly mystical. The buffer will translate the echo's memories into experiences your living consciousness can process, Ketra explained as final preparations continued. You will witness events as if present but unable to interact, a ghost in memories not your own. Activate preliminary connection, Moira instructed, establishing baseline resonance. The interface hummed to life, crystal components vibrating at frequencies just beyond normal perception. Above, the echo pulsed more rapidly, its inner light shifting toward the violet end of the spectrum. Kakarot felt a strange pressure building within his mind, not painful but increasingly intense, like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. Primary connection in 3, 2, 1. Moira initiated the final sequence, and the containment field around the echo disengaged. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then reality seemed to fold around Kakarot, his perception tearing free from the physical chamber and plunging into a kaleidoscope of fragmented images. He experienced a momentary sensation of falling through infinite space before his consciousness stabilized within the buffer's protective framework. When his awareness fully coalesced, he found himself standing on what appeared to be the bridge of a massive spacecraft. The view screens showed a red-tinged planet surrounded by smaller moons. Though he had never seen it before, something in his blood recognized it immediately. Planet Vegeta, homeworld of the Saiyans. The thought came not from his own mind but from the consciousness whose memories he now observed, Frieza, the tyrant responsible for his people's extinction. Kakarot Experry, Ensta disorienting double awareness. His own consciousness remained distinct, yet he simultaneously perceived Frieza's emotions and thoughts as they had existed in that moment. What shocked him most was the casual nature of the genocide he witnessed. In Frieza's memory, the destruction of an entire species was merely a business decision, the elimination of a potential threat, a calculation of risks. K versus benefit with no more emotional investment than discarding a broken tool. Such primitive creatures, really, came Frieza's thoughts, tinged with boredom and mild irritation. Useful for clearing planets, but becoming too ambitious for their own good. That ridiculous legend about a Super Saiyan has them thinking above their station. Best to eliminate the problem now before it requires more extensive measures. Kakarot watched through Frieza's eyes as the tyrant raised a single finger, generating a small energy sphere that grew rapidly in size and power. With casual precision, Frieza launched the attack toward planet Vegeta. The sensation of satisfaction, of mild amusement even, that accompanied the planet's subsequent explosion revolted Kakarot to his core. The memory shifted, fragile, ending briefly before reconstructing around a different scene, this one featuring a confrontation between Frieza and what appeared to be Serpent Imperium representatives. Naga's people, regal and powerful, negotiating from a position that Frieza's thoughts identified as one of declining strength. Another species that has outlived its usefulness, came the cold assessment. Their technological advances have plateaued, and their moral qualms make them increasingly unreliable. The Serpent Imperium controls too many valuable resources to be allowed independence any longer. Again, Kakarot witnessed genocide executed with bureaucratic efficiency, not a single planet this time but a systematic destruction of 17 worlds, each housing a different aspect of the Serpent civilization. Most disturbing was the methodical nature of the extinction, designed specifically to capture key technologies and knowledge before eliminating their creators. The memories continued, showing Frieza's vast empire. The countless species subjugated or exterminated, the casual cruelty with which the tyrant maintained his dominion across the living universe. Throughout it all ran a constant thread of cold calculity. A mind that viewed all other beings as either tools to be used or threats to be eliminated. When the memory sequence finally released him, Kakarot gasped back to awareness in the interface chair, body rigid with tension. Mind reeling from the experience. Around him, the others watched with expressions ranging from clinical interest to genuine concern. Vital signs stabilizing, Moira reported. Neural patterns indicate successful integration of memory transfer without permanent alterations to subject's consciousness matrix. Kakarot sat up slowly, disconnecting the crystal interfaces from his skin with deliberate movements. His mind felt simultaneously expanded and compressed, filled with knowledge that wasn't his own yet intimately connected to his existence. "Did you see it all?" Naga asked, her usually composed features tight with emotion. "Did you see what he did to our worlds?" "Yes," Kakarot confirmed, voice rough. "Every planet, every civilization. The Saiyans were just one of many he destroyed without a second thought." Vesa moved closer, her celestial form more solid than he had ever seen it. The echo contained more than just destruction memories, she observed. It showed Frieza's empire, his operations, his current activities in the living realm. "He still lives," Kakarot confirmed, the realization settling into his consciousness with the weight of certainty. "Still rules much of the galaxy. Still destroys worlds and species when it suits his purposes." Keitra materialized fully beside the interface, her form now completely corporeal, a sign of the power she had expended maintaining the buffer during the procedure. "And now you understand why this echo penetrated Hell's boundaries. Frieza's actions have created such immense spiritual disruption that fragments of his consciousness resonate across dimensional barriers." Duke Azrael's proxy, Thaxis, stepped forward from his observation alcove. "The Duke will want a complete report on everything you witnessed, particularly regarding dimensional transit technologies and psychic projection methods." Kakarot's eyes narrowed at the demand, but before he could respond, Lilith intervened smoothly. "My father will receive his report once we've ensured there are no delayed effects from the procedure. The Saiyan's well-being takes priority, as agreed in our arrangement." The proxy bowed slightly in acknowledgement and withdrew, though his expression suggested the Duke's patience would be limited. When he had gone, Kakarot turned to the assembled group, the unlikely alliance of individuals who had made this revelation possible. "The echo showed more than just what Frieza did," he said quietly. "It showed weakness in the boundaries between realms. Points where the living and dead universes touch, where passage might be possible under specific conditions." Moira's circuits pulsed rapidly. Theoretical breaches in dimensional partitioning confirmed by memory data. "Not theoretical," Kakarot corrected. Frieza's empire discovered actual transition points, places where the barrier between dimensions is thin enough that specially prepared individuals or objects can pass through. They've been studying these breaches for years. The implications landed heavily among the group. For damned souls or Hell's denizens, the possibility of escape to the living realm was revolutionary, blasphemous even, in terms of cosmic order. "The adjudicator would destroy us all merely for possessing this knowledge," Vesa warned. "The system my kind enforces tolerates no exceptions to the separation between life and death. Which is precisely why we must act on it," Kakarot countered. "Not just to escape Hell, but to stop Frieza from continuing his genocides. The echo showed me something else, something personal." He paused, the weight of revelation still settling within him. "I wasn't sent to Hell deliberately. My pod was meant for Earth, a planet Frieza had marked for future conquest. Instead, it encountered one of these dimensional breaches during transit and was diverted here." The revelation brought silence, each processing its significance in their own way. For Kakarot, it represented both closure and new purpose. Understanding at last how he had arrived in Hell while simultaneously identifying a path forward that transcended mere survival. "What do you propose?" Naga asked finally, her golden eyes intent. Kakarot stood, decision crystallizing within him with characteristic certainty. "We find one of these transition points. We prepare ourselves using the knowledge gained from the echo. Hen we do what no one in Hell's history has successfully done, we escape to the living realm. To what end? Lilith pressed, though her expression suggested she already anticipated his answer. To stop Frieza, Kakarot replied simply. To prevent more genocides. To ensure that what happened to the Saiyans and the Serpent Imperium never happens again. It was ambitious beyond reason, potentially suicidal, and certainly violating every principle of cosmic order, a plan that could attract the attention of not just Hell's lords but entities like the Adjudicator who maintained the very structure of reality. Yet as Kakarot voiced it, he saw not doubt in the faces around him, but consideration. Even calculation. In Hell, alliances formed and dissolved based on expediency and advantage. Trust was a luxury few could afford. But in this moment, bound by shared purpose and the unprecedented knowledge they now possessed, something new seemed possible, a covenant not just of convenience but of genuine common cause. The transition point nearest to Hell's current configuration appears to be in the crystal void beyond the ninth circle, Moira stated, circuits pulsing as she processed information extracted from the echo. Estimated travel time, 17 cycles under optimal conditions. Duke Azrael will never permit this, Lilith warned. Once he learns what the echo contained, he'll secure this knowledge for himself. My father plays the long game. He would rather study these transition points for centuries than risk immediate action. Then we don't tell him everything, Kakarot decided. Quote, we provide enough to satisfy his curiosity while keeping our true intentions concealed. Keetra, who had remained silent during this exchange, finally spoke. You will need power beyond what you currently possess to succeed in this endeavor. The boundaries between realms resist violation with forces that can destroy even the strongest entities. What kind of power? Kakarot asked. The forgotten goddess's form shifted slightly, revealing momentarily that more primal aspect that lurked beneath her beautiful exterior. The kind only a pact can provide, a binding of blood and fire between willing participants who share purpose absolute. Quote, a hell covenant, Lilith translated, her ember eyes widening slightly. Those haven't been successfully formed in eons. The risks are considerable, Keetra acknowledged. But the potential benefits equal them. A covenant properly formed between complementary entities can create power greater than the sum of its parts, power sufficient perhaps to breach the barriers between life and death. Kakarot looked around at the unlikely assembly, half-demon noble, serpent queen, soul engineer, fallen celestial, and forgotten goddess. Different in nearly every aspect yet united by the knowledge they now shared and the purpose it suggested. A covenant requires absolute trust, he noted. Something rare in Hell. Not trust, Keetra corrected. Alignment. Our purposes must align perfectly for the duration of the covenant. Our methods and motivations beyond that need not concern us. It was pragmatic, realistic, and quintessentially Hell-like in its approach. Focusing on practical outcomes rather than idealistic notions. Kakarot found himself nodding slowly in agreement. Then let's begin preparations, he decided. Moira, extract everything you can throw. The interface about transition points and the technologies Frieza's empire uses to study them. Naga, we'll need your expertise on soul-binding techniques to adapt the covenant for our specific needs. Vesa, your knowledge of dimensional boundaries will be essential for identifying the optimal approach to the transition point. And me? Lilith asked, one eyebrow raised. Kakarot met her gaze directly. We need to prepare the Ashborn. If we're going to attempt this, we'll need their strength and loyalty, and we'll need to ensure they understand exactly what they're committing to. She nodded in acceptance of the task, but her expression remained troubled. My father will discover our true intentions eventually. When he does, by then, we'll either have succeeded or failed, Kakarot replied with grim pragmatism. Either way, his reaction will be irrelevant. As the group dispersed to begin their preparations, Keetra remained behind, her form flickering between states as if struggling to maintain coherence. There is something you should know, Saiyan, she said when they were alone. The covenant I propose requires a focus, a central entity through whom the combined power flows and is directed. I assumed that would be me, Kakarot acknowledged. The goddess's constantly shifting eyes fixed on him with unsettling intensity. Yes, but what you may not understand is that such focus comes with permanent alteration. You will remain yourself, but also become something more, something neither fully Saiyan nor fully Hellborn, but a hybrid entity capable of existing in both realms. Kakarot absorbed this information without visible reaction, though internally he recognized its significance. From his earliest memories, he had existed as an anomaly, a living being in the realm of the dead. Neither fully belonging to Hell nor connected to his Saiyan heritage. What Kitra described seemed less a transformation than a formalization of what he had always been. "I understand," he said finally. "And I accept." The forgotten goddess studied him for a long moment before a smile curved her ancient lips. "Yes," she murmured, "I believe you do. Perhaps that is why you fell into Hell, Kakarot of the Saiyans, not by chance or cosmic error, but by design beyond even my comprehension. The universe occasionally creates its own corrections to imbalances too great to endure." Before he could question this cryptic statement, Kitra's form dissolved completely, leaving Kakarot alone with his thoughts and the weight of decisions that would soon reshape not just his existence, but potential. Why the barriers between life and death themselves? The Covenant awaited. Beyond it, perhaps, a world he had never known but that called to his blood nonetheless. And somewhere in that living realm, Arant who had destroyed his people continued his reign of destruction, unaware that Hell itself might soon send judgment in the form of a Saiyan forged in its fires. Chapter 3. Ascension. The Vault of Cho sprawled beneath Dukas Ryle's obsidian spire, a labyrinthine repository of knowledge forbidden even to most of Hell's ruling class. Ancient texts lined walls that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Artifacts from forgotten epochs floated in containment fields, some pulsing with energies that defied classification. At the vault's center stood a circular chamber where reality itself seemed thinner. The boundaries between dimensions perceptibly weakened by the accumulated power of the collected forbidden knowledge. Here, Kakarot and his allies gathered in secret, away from Azrael's ever-watchful eyes. 21 days had passed since the revelation of Frieza's echo, each hour dedicated to careful preparation for what would either be their liberation or their final end. "The Covenant requires 5 anchor points," Kitra explained, her form more solid than usual as she traced glowing symbols onto the chamber floor. 5 distinct energies unified through a central vessel. Kakarot nodded, studying the complex pattern taking shape. The ancient binding ritual would connect him to each of the women who had joined his cause: Lilith, Vesa, Naga, Moira, and Kitra herself. Each brought unique abilities essential to breaking Hell's boundaries, and each had committed to the pact for reasons of their own. Once established, the Covenant cannot be broken without destroying all participants, Kitra continued, her shifting eyes momentarily revealing that more primal aspect lurking beneath her beautiful exterior. "Are you certain of this path, Saiyan? There are less dangerous methods of seeking power, but none that would allow us to cross the boundary between realms," Kakarot replied with characteristic directness. "We've discussed this. The decision is made." Across the chamber, Moira monitored a device of her own creation, a hybrid of technological components and mystical artifacts that measured dimensional stability. Her circuit-like markings pulsed with increased intensity as she processed the data. "Dimensional stress patterns indicate optimal ritual timing approaching," she reported. "Boundary permeability reaches maximum threshold in 17 hours, aiding with Hell's crimson moon alignment." 17 hours, Lilith echoed, her ember eyes calculating. "My father meets with Lord Mephisto's then. The timing works to our advantage. Most of his attempt ion and forces will be directed toward maintaining diplomatic protocols." Naga, who had been studying one of the ancient texts, closed it with deliberate care. "The Serpent Scrolls confirm what the Echo showed us. There are 7 known transition points between Hell and the mortal realm. The nearest lies beyond the 9th circle, in what the ancients called the Void of Shattered Stars. A treacherous region," Vesa added, her celestial form glimmering with subdued light. "Even my kind avoid it. The laws of reality become negotiable there." Kakarot absorbed this information with the focused intensity that had become his hallmark, assessing, calculating, deciding. Over the years in Hell, he had developed a strategic mind to complement his warrior's instincts, recognizing that survival required both strength and cunning. "Then we proceed as planned," he declared. "Lilith will secure our exit from Azrael's domain. Moira's devices will shield us from detection as we travel to the ritual site. Once the Covenant is established, we make immediately for the transition point. The simplicity of the statement belied the complexity of what they proposed, an escape from hell itself, something no damned soul had ever permanently achieved, and certainly not with the intention of confronting a tyrant in the mortal realm. As the others dispersed to complete their preparations, Vesa lingered, her luminescent presence drawing Kakarot's attention. The fallen celestial's form had stabilized considerably since their first meeting, though she still occasionally flickered between states when agitated. "You have concerns," Kakarot observed, recognizing the subtle tension in her ethereal features. "The adjudicator will sense our attempt," she replied without preamble. "My former colleague maintains the boundaries between realms with singular purpose. When we begin the covenant ritual, it will register as a disturbance he cannot ignore." Kakarot nodded. They had anticipated this complication. "That's why timing is essential. We complete the ritual and move immediately toward the transition point. The covenant should provide enough power to overcome his initial response." Vesa's Galaxia. Eyes studied him with uncomfortable intensity. "You speak with such certainty, yet no living being has successfully challenged the adjudicator's authority over dimensional boundaries." "No living being raised in hell has ever tried," he countered. "Perhaps that makes the difference." A smile ghosted across her luminous features. "Perhaps it does. Your unique existence has always fascinated me, Kakarot. Neither fully belonging to hell nor completely separate from it. Neither alive as mortals understand it nor dead as the damned experience it." She moved closer, her presence bringing a sensation like standing beneath starlight. "In my countless years enforcing cosmic order, I never encountered anything quite like you." The admission carried weight beyond mere observation. Over. Create follow-up. __. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.